Good morning, and you are very welcome to today's video. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rebecca, and I use homeopathy and QTT personal development methods, coaching and mentoring to help you and your family to be as healthy and as happy as possible and stay that way. So today's video is part of a series of videos that I've been doing for the last few months, where we go once a month, we go into a little bit more detail about the remedies that are in a home prescribing kit, like this one, which is from the UK homeopathic pharmacy Helios. This is a home prescriber's kit, and it has 36 remedies in it. This is mine, it's very old and it's a bit of a mess, I'm afraid, but it looks like that. So it's got 36 2-gram bottles in it. And this is the kit that I base my home prescribing course around. And it's a kit that I know that many of you will be familiar with. So it's just helpful to have a little bit more of an in-depth understanding of some of the more widely used remedies so that you can recognise them better when you come across them. So before we kind of really start, if you are watching, I would love to know that you can hear me. So do send me a thumbs up or a heart or smiley face or anything really, or a comment. That would be really helpful. And also, actually, for those of you who are already familiar with using today's remedy, which is a remedy called Kali-Bich or Kali-Bich, then let me know if you've used it for anything in the past. That would be great to hear, and let me know, how you got on with it. So I don't know how many of you are following me on a regular basis, but if you are, then you'll know that this year I've started doing a theme or a kind of thought for each week. And my theme this week was about making space, clearing spaces. And when we are talking about sinusitis, then it's very much about making space on a physical basis, basically. So because your sinuses, which are all over your head actually, but mostly the ones that give us a problem would be here and here, and sometimes across here. They're also in the back of your head, they're all over your head, and in other parts of your body too. And they're cavities. They are spaces that are meant to be clear and they're meant to be flowing. And when they get congested and bunged up, they get inflamed and then they can get infected. And because they're very small spaces, that can be extremely uncomfortable. And it's actually rather a common complaint amongst people having inflamed sinuses. And I think it's helpful to understand why that might be. So when we're giving a remedy like Kali-Bich, and Kali-Bich is not the only remedy that is capable of helping to clear your sinuses, but it is a really good one. You're encouraging your body to actually process all the stuff that's built up in your sinuses and to drain it away. And I seem to be losing connection, so I hope it's going to be okay. If I do, then I'll reconnect and come back in. Okay, so it's this week's theme. It's about making spaces, but on a physical basis, really. So I think it must be because of the storm. Thanks for the thumbs up, whoever you are. I can't see who you are, I'm afraid, but you're very welcome. Yeah, because of the storm that's here, I think that's interfering with my connection, so it's not as good as it normally is. So hopefully we'll be okay, though. Okay, so Kali-Bich. Let's just see if I'm on track. yeah, and I should say, do pop any questions in and I can answer them live, or if you're watching this on replay, then it's not too late. Do pop your questions into the thread and I'll answer them when I get round to it. So, understanding why a lot of us suffer from sinusitis. It's anything with itis on the end means that area is inflamed. That's all it means, basically, nothing fancier than that. So it helps if you understand why the inflammation process is triggered when you have an inflamed area. And in the case of the sinuses, it is about a build-up of toxins, basically. Toxins that should be being processed out the normal way, which is through your bowels or your wee or sweating or anything like that. Usually you get a build-up of toxins in the sinuses when your digestive tract or your bowels aren't working terribly well. So there's always some kind of link with your digestion. Now that can be on an acute basis, so it can be something that just flares up out of nowhere. You've never had that problem before, and it's just a sign that your system is overloaded, basically, and that it's been forced to start putting toxins into the sinuses. Takes a long time to build up, so it can have been building for a while, and then because of that build up of toxins, what the body does first of all is it makes mucus to try and transport the toxins out of your sinuses and through your nose or down the back of your throat, or wherever the sinuses are, the nearest exit route. If it can't do that, if there's too much there and the mucus is allowed to build up, which it does very easily because your sinuses are often very narrow, thin tubes, then the mucus will remain in place and it becomes stagnant. Because it's not moving, it then gets infected very easily. And that's what causes the swelling and the pain. So you get pains across here or across here. And because all of this area, your ear, nose and throat's all connected, it's all really one tube, then you can get all sorts of accompanying pains with the problem. So you can actually get obviously visible symptoms. So this area can get very swollen. You can get headaches. You can have an attempt by the body to get rid of the mucus, and you can feel it dripping down the back of your throat. You can get a loss of smell, funny taste in your mouth, all sorts of things, and it's really unpleasant, and can be particularly unpleasant if you're lying down trying to go to sleep. So, Kali-Bich is a fantastic remedy. It's not a huge remedy, so it's not a remedy that you would use for lots and lots of things, and I'm going to focus really on the sinuses today because I think that's pretty much the only time you'll use it. But I will dip into what Kali-Bich is like as a whole as well. I have to say I've never used it for a wider purpose, but I have used it with great success for sinusitis in the past. So first of all, as I said, it is a specific for sinusitis. It has a particular affinity with this whole area, and also the throat. So the whole kind of ear, nose, throat area. It's great for easing congestion and getting the mucus to start actually moving and flowing, and that in turn will bring almost instant relief. Okay, so what the symptoms are when you've got sinusitis that Kali-Bich will help with is all the classic symptoms. So you have a kind of fullness and sense of congestion at the root of the nose, so that's here. You can have a loss of smell. You can have lots of quite violent sneezing. You can have a postnasal drip. You can have a loss of taste as well. You can have mucus that comes out, and it often with Kali-Bich it'll come out in long strings of kind of yellowy green snot. Sorry, it's a bit early in the morning for this, I know. But that's, if you see those long strings, you often see it in children actually. And children will have what we call the snuffles. They're kind of sniffing and hawking often. Adults do it too. You kind of hawk to get the mucus up that's dripped down the back of your throat. So you can either have these long strings, or you can have big, thick, sticky lumps of mucus that are almost like scabs, and they can be hard to pull away. And when they do pull away, they leave a kind of raw area, almost like an ulcer. And that's another thing that Kali-Bich has, is because it comes originally from potassium, which is a compound of chromium. It has a very corrosive action. So it has ulcers and holes and kind of, things that look as if the tissue has been eaten away, if you like. And obviously, because this is how we breathe, there can be mouth breathing rather than nose breathing. It can be very hard to breathe, particularly at night. And also you can get a kind of swapping over from one side, from one nostril to the other. Can be quite similar symptoms to Nux vom, actually. And also Kali-Bich can be very irritable. Not quite as irritable as Nux vom. So if someone's really, really bad-tempered and there are other symptoms, then go with your Nux. But Kali's can be quite grumpy too, because it's difficult when you can't breathe, basically. So as I've said, yes, it's made from potassium, and when we look at the poisoning symptoms from chromium, then they're very much in line with the symptoms that Kali-Bich is capable of addressing. So there's all those sinus symptoms. There's a very corrosive quality, so there's lots of ulcers, and you can get ulcers in the nose from the sinus symptoms, from the actual mucus that's built up. It can be quite corrosive in itself, so it causes these sores in the nose. It can produce dizziness and a state of collapse, and often with Kali-Bich patients, there's an enormous weakness that's there. So you just feel really weak and unable to do anything, no physical strength at all. I can see that people are joining, but for some reason I cannot see who you are today. So whoever you are, you're very welcome, and do let me know who you are in the comments if you wish, or give me a thumbs up. That'd be nice. Okay, so if you ingest too much chromium, then you can get all that weakness, that dizziness, vertigo, sinus symptoms, intensely thirsty, and that's something that the remedy will help with as well. You do get with sinusitis because you've got that build-up of mucus that's there, and it's quite thick mucus. Then the body will attempt to break that down by taking on as much water as possible so that it can be diluted. And actually that's a good thing to be doing anyway when you've got any kind of mucusy thing going on, is that you can make it much more comfortable and much better able to flow if you're drinking enough water, and preferably body temperature water, and then your system can break it down better and get rid of it. So Kali-Bich's very thirsty. There can be things like muscle cramping and abnormal bleeding. So you can get nosebleeds with the sinus symptoms as well. It's very hard on the liver and the kidneys. So again, if you're looking at Kali-Bich in a wider sense, it can have liver symptoms and kidney symptoms as well. And ultimately, you can go into a state of coma if you have a poisoning from chromium, total shutdown. And if you get chromium poisoning on your skin from skin contact, you will get those corrosive burns, and they can go right down to the bone, actually. And you can get eczemas, kind of inflamed skin reactions. And again, you might get that with the sinusitis if you've had it for a long time. So sinusitis generally is what I would call a chronic problem, because it is something that builds up slowly over time. And that's another thing about Kali-Bich, is that the symptoms that it addresses tend to have that quality. They tend to be things that have built up over a long time. And you might find that you need a different remedy to actually get to the real heart of the problem, which will be in the gut somewhere. But the Kali-Bich will give you great relief, as it helps your body to shift that mucus from the sinuses and just process things a bit better. So definitely worth considering. The other thing is it will have pains that move around. They're very precise pains. So you'll get people with problems with the sinuses that will say, yeah, it hurts just there, or just there. Oh, no, wait a minute, it's moved. Now it's just there. They're very, very particular about exactly where the pains are, but the pains can move around a lot. So that brings me on to the mental emotional symptoms of Kali-Bich. And as I've said, I haven't really used this as a constitutional remedy as such, although I do kind of know people who are a little bit like this that I might want to give it to. But they tend to be very, if you think about that, being very particular about the pains and where they are, they're very precise, very regular, very law-abiding, rule-abiding people. Excuse me, bit of a sore throat. These are the people who are never going to break rules. They do everything by the book. So they might get worried that if you're not doing something properly. So those are the kind of mental emotional symptoms that you're dealing with. Very conservative people, kind of make for the perfect bureaucrat, basically, or pen pusher. I'm trying not to be derogatory, because there are always reasons why people are like that. But they really need to stick to the rules, and that comes out when they're describing what they're feeling like. So that's why they're describing those pains in a very particular, very precise way. They're quite closed and kind of in their own worlds. They don't really need a lot of people around. They value their immediate family, and they would like to spend time with them, but they're not really interested in anybody else. And they don't have very many friends. It could be because they are so particular, and so they have a need to want to actually explain things to people, explain why things must be done in a certain way, and why the rules are there, and why they're important. So that can be quite hard work for the rest of us. So they're very self-contained, and they don't really need people terribly much. So what else? Yes, with the sinus pains and stuff, you can also get a lot of throat symptoms, or you could have just the throat symptoms on their own. So you can have a lot of hoarseness and laryngitis. So again, there's inflammation in the larynx, because it is actually coming from the sinuses. So because the body's trying to get rid of that mucus, it often drips down the back of the throat, and then it will sometimes collect in the throat area because it's quite thick. And again, because it's infected or it gets infected, then the mucous membranes of the throat will kick into action, and they will try and make more mucus, or they will start to get inflamed in order to process the stuck mucus that's sitting there. So that can cause laryngitis and sore throat. And all of this build-up, this congestion, can give headaches and migraines. And again, usually those headaches and migraines are described by the sufferer in, as, the pain is right there, or it's right there. It's not a kind of general, I don't really know where it is. They're very precise about where the pain is, even though it might move around. There's great general weakness, and the digestion can be pretty weak too. There's a feeling of fullness and nausea that can build up. Sometimes that's because of the amount of inflammation that's in the body. Sweat too, because the body's trying to get rid of stuff, so there can be a lot of sweating. And Jessie, let me just see, you just sent me a question. Jessie is saying, what if I have all those symptoms, but I'm not a very, very strict rule-abiding person? I'm very easygoing. Do I try the remedy anyway? Yes, definitely, Jessie. It's not often that we see a really clear constitutional remedy, to be honest, that's going to sort out absolutely everything in our lives and is a great match. So when you're dealing with things that are acute, which sinus problems can be both. They are usually caused by something chronic, but they flare up and down according to how well your system is coping with rubbish disposal. So in an acute basis, and certainly to kind of shift things enough so that you can see what's really going on underneath, then definitely Kali-Bich can help with that drainage. As I said, there are other remedies, so it's not the only sinusitis remedy. So it will depend on what else is going on. So don't worry about the mental emotionals. They're not... I, to be honest, would use Kali-Bich more as an acute remedy than a constitutional. So I hope that helps. But look at the other sinus remedies too. Sinusitis can be, pulsatilla can be a big sinusitis remedy. Nox can be as well. But you're always looking for the keynotes and the modalities, which we'll come on to. And obviously sometimes the etiology, the causations too. So if you've got a kind of clear idea about why, excuse me, your system might be overloaded, then, and that correlates with, what your sinus symptoms are, then that might lead you in a slightly different direction. And if you get stuck, then do either post in the group, the members group, or give me a call and we can talk about it. So I hope that helps, Jessie. So modalities. Oh, the other thing is, yes, unrefreshing sleep, and watery eyes, which become very sensitive to things like tobacco smoke. And that's all makes sense when you think about it. If you've got all this congestion and build up, this whole area becomes much more sensitive. And you can have very ropey saliva in your mouth too. Again, you see this more in children. If you have that scent, when they open their mouths and you can see kind of ropes of saliva at the back of the throat. And actually Kali-Bich can be helpful if there's tonsils being swollen as well. Because if children have still got their tonsils and they have got this sinus stuff going on, or adults actually, then the tonsils might be a little bit inflamed as well, because they're part of your immune system. So it doesn't help your comfort at all, because obviously you've got so much congestion already around here and up here, that the last thing you want is the tonsils being swollen as well. So it's a bit miserable when you feel like this. And if you're not sure, if you're thinking, I don't know whether it's pulsatilla or Kali-Bich or, Nux Vom or whatever, then alternate 2 remedies, perhaps on an hourly basis. You quickly realise whether things are happening, whether things are starting to drain. If they are working, your body will choose the best way to process the mucus out and drain it. Sometimes, if it's not too severe, you can just get a general sense of clearing, because the body's been able to just start breaking that mucus down and shifting it. Sometimes you'll get a kind of kick-started big drainage of mucus down the back of the throat, which can be a little bit uncomfortable. So if that's the case, then you just reduce your dosage of the remedies down, so that you're just, putting the brakes on a little bit, but you're not stopping it, because actually drainage is what you want. So that's one way. Or the other way is obviously that you start to produce much more mucus coming out of your nose. But in either case, you should have a sense that things are clearing, that you are actually being able to make space in your sinuses. That can take, depending on how long you've had this going on, it can take a few days, it can take sometimes a few weeks, but you should always feel that the drainage is lessening, that you're getting more and more ease from the congestion, and preferably as well that the colour of the mucus that's coming out is changing from, let's say, greeny yellowy, and going down to opaque and then eventually transparent. And the consistency should reduce from being that really thick mucus to get thinner and thinner and thinner. And then you're going in the right direction. So that's going to depend on each person as to how you respond to a prescription to help clear your sinuses. Okay, so modalities. These are the things that we look for that are going to help us select whether Kali-Bich is in fact the right sinus remedy, as well as all those symptoms that I've described. You're going to have usually that you feel better for heat. So kind of applied heat. So sometimes people get relief from putting a hot water bottle on their head, or lying with a hot water bottle, on their face. Being wrapped up, so putting a hat on or wrapping a scarf around your throat. All those things will make a Kali-Bich patient feel better. I don't mean recover, but just will give them some relief from the symptoms, make them feel a bit more comfortable. They can be better for moving around. So actually the congestion and the discomfort seems a bit less if they're actually walking around, moving around. They can be better in the open air, fresh air, as long as they don't get too cold, because they really don't like being cold. And they'd be quite sensitive to cold air. They actually, if they've got any digestive stuff going on, they're actually better for vomiting, and they're better for short sleep. So having a nap can sometimes make them feel better. And because of that coldness, they get comfort from hot liquids, so soups or teas or anything like that. So that can make things feel a bit better. And also warm liquids or even just warm water is going to be instantly available to the body. And obviously what the body at this time is looking for is ways to break down that mucus. So it often will ramp up the thirst, but it'll be for warm liquids, warm water, warm soups or teas or anything like that. It usually would be worse for eating as well. And that's largely because the body is being forced to take attention away from, but also we tend to eat foods that aren't helping them. So obviously if you are suffering from sinusitis, the things to avoid definitely are dairy, cow's milk products. I personally would try and avoid all dairy while I had any sinus problems. Things like oranges, actually, not great. Bananas can encourage mucus production too. Sugar, refined sugar, helps encourage mucus production. So all of those things, and they're just kind of common sense things too, that you want all your immune system's defense strategies to be working as best they can. So, don't go out and drink loads of alcohol. Don't, be eating lots of bread and lots of sweet things. Excuse me. You're much better off having a clean, plant-based diet and as liquid as possible if you can. Yeah, a little bit congested myself at the moment. Beer and alcohol, but beer in particular, will make a Kali-Bich sinus sufferer much worse. And interestingly, actually, the yeast that's used in beer has very high chromium content. So that was an interesting thing to mark. So, I mean, that's pretty much it, really. What else can I tell you? Yeah, often if you get somebody to stick their tongue out, the tongue will be yellow and coated. Not very nice. And the breath can be quite smelly. That's usually because there's such a build-up of mucus there that it kind of smells, that catarrhal smell. They can have a sensation of tickling, really irritating tickling in a very particular spot, again, which is at the back of the tongue and also in the left nostril. So if somebody's complaining of that with all the other symptoms, then you know that Kali-Bich's your remedy. And because the sinuses are running through here as well, and if this is all congested and creating lots of pressure, what you can get as well is a lot of toothache or tooth pains. And if you've got this kind of problem going on a regular basis, you've had it for a while, be very careful about dentistry. And this is something that I can many years ago. I had terrible problems with some teeth on my right side, I think it was, yeah. And they just kept getting infected. I kept going to the dentist, and the dentist would prescribe, in those days, a long time ago, antibiotics and latterly I didn't do the antibiotics, but I took remedies and it would die down. But it just kept happening, and I ended up in frustration. I just said, okay, to take the tooth out, just remove the tooth. And the tooth was taken out. It was infected. But I found out when it happened again, I thought, well, I can't keep having my teeth pulled out. I need to get to the bottom of this. And I investigated and went to see some other practitioners, some more holistic practitioners. And it actually turned out that my sinus was very, very inflamed along here, very inflamed, because I was totally out of alignment. And I had some wonderful craniosacral treatment, which put me back into alignment, released the most hideous amount of infected mucus that came out of my nose. And I have never touch wood, I've never had a problem with my teeth in that regard since. So who knows, if I'd actually gone down that route initially, maybe I could have saved my tooth. And unfortunately, when I reported that back to the dentist, that, wow, guess what? She wasn't very receptive to it. So I'm just saying, with sinus stuff, it can wander into lots of different areas, particularly your teeth, if you're not careful. And then it can appear that your teeth are at fault, your teeth are rotten and all the rest of it, which they can become, but that's not what the problem is. The problem's up in your sinuses. And ultimately, it's not your sinuses even, it's actually usually in your digestion. So it's just tracing it back, why do things happen? And the reason that your sinuses are being used as a rubbish disposal system is because your bowels and your digestion are not functioning quite as well as they should be, or that you've just got an overload of toxins. And that's actually the cause of a lot of joint problems as well, because again, they're holes in the body. They're cavities that our body can dump rubbish in. And when it builds up, it gets infected, it gets inflamed, and it causes us problems. So I hope that has helped you with Kali-Bich. If you're, if you have any questions about it, or about sinusitis, about if you have any experience of using Kali-Bich in the past, then I'd love to hear from you. It'd be great to hear. And if you've enjoyed this video, there are, I think, 7 or 8 other videos based around some of the commonly used remedies in this kit. And if you're interested in knowing more about the home prescribing course, then you can pop onto my website, which is www.homeopathygiveswings.com, and the address is in the post with this video. And you can either have a look at the courses, there's a link to find out more, or you can register for a free call with me and we can have a chat about how I can help you, either working one-to-one or on the course itself. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Do have a fabulous weekend, and thank you so much for watching. Okay, take care.